Welcome to Right on the Mark with your host, Mark Young. Today we're going to be talking about my birthdays through the years. I had a lot of requests by a lot of fans out there that wanted to hear about my birthdays that I celebrated. I recently celebrated a birthday last week, and I thought now's a good time to talk about it. I can remember going way back, way back, probably whenever I was in first, second, third grade. We always had big parties at our house growing up. I lived on Willow Drive, and we had a big basement. It wasn't finished, but it had a big open area. It had a lot of space to roam, a lot of places to run, a lot of places to just set up tables and chairs and have games and all that fun stuff. But I could remember, my cousins coming. I could remember my classmates from school coming. Like I said, I was probably in first, second, or third grade, somewhere around there. And we had tons of food. There was always food there. There was always adults there. Like my mom and dad would be there. My cousin's mom would be there to help. Some of my classmates' moms were there to help. So, we had all the streamers. We had all the hats and whistles and games and stuff like that. And, it was just a big celebration back then. You had to plan ahead. That's for sure. You had to plan ahead. You had to hand out all the invitations at school. You had to call your friends. If you didn't know their phone number, you just had to tell them at school, tell them when it was and what day, and so forth. And every so often, you always miss somebody. Somebody couldn't make it, or for some reason, you didn't have enough invitations, or you forgot to give it to them, or you wrote down the wrong day, or perhaps somebody came early. This one time, a good friend of mine, Amy, showed up 2 days early, and she came dressed in a dress, which I thought was funny. So she got dressed up for my birthday party. However, it was not for 2 more days. So we're getting ready to leave. Me, my brother and sister and my mom were probably going to Hills or something. And we're getting ready to pull out of the driveway. And all of a sudden, a car pulls up at the bottom of the driveway and lets Amy out. And she comes running up the driveway in her skirt and this big present. I remember the big present. I'm like, Amy, what are you doing here? She's like, well, isn't today your birthday party? I'm like, no, my birthday party isn't for 2 more sleeps. Back then, I counted my birthdays by how many times I went to sleep, just because I knew that made the day go faster. So I don't know if y'all out there did that, but I know that's how I used to count it as a little kid. But Amy showed up early and she went back. But for 2 days, I was wondering what was in that present. I couldn't believe she bought a big present for me like that. So I finally opened it 2 days later, and here it was a model airplane. I'm like, that's what it was. So I don't remember any other presents, but I do remember that model airplane that she got me. And the only reason was because she came 2 days early, and I constantly get reminded of that around my birthday. I thought that was kind of fun, but, we always had games, like we'd play pin the tail on a donkey, the clothespin game, you held the clothespin up to your nose and you try to get it into the mason jar, something like that. We always had like a beanbag toss, of course there was cake and presents, and those cakes back then, if I had kids of, like 30 kids would come over, you're setting up 3 to 4 tables, and you're putting out all these napkins and plates, and you have to get a full sheet cake. I mean, geez, these full sheet cake, they probably fed, if you cut them 2 by 2 in slices, they probably fed 50 people. But it's probably with the parents and the kids that we had, and my family and cousins and aunts and uncles, I bet you there were 50 people that were there. But and it was an all-day affair too. I remember as a kid having birthday parties like, I'll say it was from 2 to 4. But, being a young, everyone probably showed up at noon and didn't leave till 6. That's for sure. That is definitely for sure. You always wanted to stretch out your birthday parties for some reason. It just made this... You just waited for it all year just to have a party. And the funny part was you saw your friends at school the day before and the day after. But you still wanted them over at your party just to play games and just run around and not do schoolwork, because at school you really couldn't do all that. you know. But as I get older, there's probably too many birthdays to remember. But I like to touch and highlight some of them that that I could remember. Uh, there was there. You always have your big ones. You have your I'll say your 10th birthday. You're finally in the double digits. And I could always compare those birthdays as if I had them with something else. So whenever you turn 10, you were able to do certain things. Whenever you turned 12, you were on the cusp of being a teenager. Whenever you were 13, you were able to go to teen night at the Elks. So you know what I mean? So you always knew, you always accompanied your age with what you were doing at the time you were doing it, if that makes sense. So, for instance, I'll say whenever I was 12, I was playing Bronco League. And I knew at 13, I was going to Pony League, but also I was going to be able to go to teen night at the Elks. So that for sure is a big deal. At least back then it was. I mean, come on. If you didn't go to the Elks back then, you were missing it. You missed the boat, basically. There's just so many things to do. But yeah, so, you could even talk about, 16, 18, 21, those numbers that you're going to want to hit, and you're going to want to celebrate those ones. So some of the ones I remember are like my 16th birthday. Dude would come over. I'd always request, if it's your birthday in my family, you request your dinner. My dinner was always a fried shrimp dinner, and it was usually homemade. Dude made, he'd bring these big jumbo fried shrimp, and my mom or my sister, Dude would even, deep fry the shrimp. And I can remember he would just buy the big, large ones. They were like the colossal shrimp, and he would bread it and he would fry it. And man, I would just eat it up. It was great. And I believe the lovely Kim even joined me the one year that I had that fried shrimp. And I still remember to this day sitting at at the dining room table in the house that I grew up and just taking a picture. I don't know who was taking a picture. Probably was my mom, but taking a picture with me holding the giant fried colossal shrimp up. Oh, that brings back memories. That's fun. I don't know what went with it. I don't know if we had steak with it or not, but I just remember the cocktail sauce and the deep fried shrimp. And the whole house smelled like shrimp too, because I'm sure we had cheese sticks with that too. And it was always done fresh. We always did fresh cheese sticks. We had the shrimp was fresh, and I don't know if we did have a barbecue then, because, in March, it's always iffy what the weather's going to be. So I don't know if we cooked any steaks on a grill. We might have had, I don't know, fish or cheeseburgers or something, to go along with that shrimp. But that was one of the big deals on my 16th birthday. And, and you always think about the presents that you got. I can remember at 16, I got a new weight set. At 16, I got a new bend bar. I got a new, exercise, like muscle. I got this like exercise muscle measurer where it comes with a tape measure, and you get to track your progress on when you're lifting weights and stuff. So there's always something that you want. You always want something big on your birthday, so you think all year of what you're going to get. So of course, like when you turn 16, you start thinking about cars. Whenever you turn 18, you start thinking about, well, maybe getting a new car. You always think about something big, and somebody's always asking you, what should I get you? What can I get you? Well, after so many years, it's hard to buy for you because, you ask for a lot of presents, and you got aunts and uncles buying for you. So then you start asking for gift cards and things like that. 18's a big number too, so you could probably go 10, 13, 16, 18, 21's really big too, I can remember, I'm trying to think, I can remember on my 21st birthday, I wanted to see the stroke of midnight when I turned 21 so I could sip my beer. So I remember at home in the living room holding a beer. Now, I can't remember the name of the beer, and I always looked at the clock on the VCR on top of our television. And I know everyone was sleeping in my house because it was almost midnight, and I just wanted to stay up. I believe it was a Friday night. I want to say it was a Friday night. Not sure what I was doing home on a Friday night in 1987, but yeah, I was home, and I had a beer in hand, and I had it cracked, and I sat there and I waited for the stroke of midnight. And then I saluted myself. And I tell you what, I'll never forget that time. That was a really memorable time, even though I was just by myself and I celebrated it. But I rung in 21, And that's how I did it. So I'd like to hear from you guys to see how you do that. You could always write in the comments below, but I remember that's how I celebrated my 21 birthday. Of course, you had other birthdays, 25 and 30, but those ones just aren't as big as, 16, 18, and 21. And, shortly after my 21st birthday, I was together with the lovely Kim at that time. We were engaged and about to get married, so things were about to change very rapidly. Suddenly I was going to have another birthday to celebrate in my family once we got married. So, so I had her family's birthday parties, our family birthday parties, then we joined them together. So, there was a lot of things going on. And my birthday was March 13th. And, I can remember as a little kid opening up presents even before school. So if I was going to school, we'll say second, third, or fourth grade, probably even first grade, I would open up the presents before I went to school. So I'd just get up a half hour early, and my mom would have the presents wrapped up, and she'd give them to me. And I always remember I sat by a warm register in our dining room, right in the hallway of our Willow Drive house, and I'd sit there because I was in my pajamas and I was always cold in the morning. So I sat by the register, and my mom would just bring the gifts, and I would open them up there. I can't remember all of the gifts that I got, but I could remember like some Hot Wheels, some of those, I want to say racetrack Hot Wheels we used to race on a racetrack. I remember getting a train set. I remember getting like some action figures and stuff like that. But, I couldn't wait for that. But then I had to leave it because I had to go to school. So that wasn't fun. I always liked the birthdays on a weekend, but it didn't always happen like that. But I could remember opening up my presents before I went to school. That was the main thing to do. And then can't remember if we celebrated anything at school or not. Sometimes we did, sometimes we didn't. It all depended. I think we had, I went to Catholic school, I think we had like maybe cake once a month for everyone's birthday, from what I'm remembering anyway. Not sure if that's true or not. But, as I got older and I started hanging out with the older crowd, whenever I was in my 20s and 30s and stuff, it was around March Madness. So March 13th comes around March Madness, and it's just right a week or two before the actual games start. But a lot of I'll say Eastern Western Conference championships and just league play and just round robin play for the whole NCAA is the week of my birthday, basically. And I could remember spending a lot of time, with my brother and his friends and just visiting and just drinking and watching basketball games around my birthday. In fact, I shared a birthday with a good friend of my brother's, Farley. He has a birthday, and I believe we're the same age. So his birthday is also March 13th, and I believe we are the same age. So it seemed like every time we met up, we're like, happy birthday to each other. So I always thought that was neat, sharing a birthday with somebody that you knew. He wasn't a close friend, but he was a close friend of my brother's. But I saw him once a year, and it was always a good time. But, speaking of March Madness, we'd always, I'd always try to make as many as I could. I started back in the late 90s going down to these March Madness parties at, either at my brother's house or Fisher's house or as a matter of fact, I think those are the only two places I ever went to have a March Madness party. But, my brother and his friends started this early 90s, I want to say, maybe late 80s. But I didn't join until probably the mid 90s. My brother lived in Manassas, so we'd go down there. And that might have been my first March Madness around my birthday whenever my brother Mike A. would, have his first March Madness. And from what I understand, he had about 3 or 4 years there. I didn't always go down there because it was probably a 5-hour drive to Manassas. But whenever they moved up and opened up a new FBI building up here in West Virginia, in Bridgeport, I went down there every year. I was a staple every year from probably, I'll say 1998, 97, somewhere around there, maybe even 96, till just this past last year. Now, it got canceled this year. Fish decided participation wasn't there, and he just didn't want to have it. But, I can remember going to all these March Madnesses for my birthday, and I would see, if it was at Fisher's house, we always called it a Fisher's Mountain. He moved a couple times, but would always have it at Fisher's place. Fish would cook. He'd make his halupkis. He'd make his kibasi. He'd make all kind of these specialty ethnic group foods, and boy, was it good. And I look forward to that every year to eat that. I'm sure everyone else did. you couldn't beat all the Fisher's food there. But, some of the friends there that I would see all the time on my birthday, of course, besides, Farley, I'd see Fish there, Coulter, Ruxer, of course, my brother Mike A., Rocky, Justin, Frank Brown was there for a while before he passed. Moorman, he'd come up whenever he can. Dumb Joe was always a staple. Of course, Lupica was there, his buddy, RPM or LRP or Laundry Room Pete or Laundry Room Pete, whatever you want to call him. He was always there if Lupica was there. You had Butsy there. You had Eric there. You had the Bushes there. You had Tom Bush and Johnny Bush. And my name there was always Dr. Mark because everybody thought I was a pharmacist because I'd always try to come down and I'd always try to give advice, medical advice. So they always called me Dr. Mark. So I kind of thought that was interesting. So to this day, I'm known as Dr. Mark, which is ironic because I still carry Motrin with me in case somebody has a headache. You never know when that happens. And I can remember turning 30. 30 was a big year, In fact, I turned 30 and I think I was down at Fisher's for my 30th birthday. And then I came home the day after. I came home to like I want to say like a surprise birthday party that the lovely Kim threw for me here at the house. And so I didn't even know about it. So I went down to my brother's. She rearranged everything, and I'd come home with Justin, and, my mom and dad were here, and a lovely Kim, and, Sean and Logan were here, and I'm not sure who else was here. Dana was probably here. Aiden was here, and we just had a good time. So I'd go down to March Madness, celebrate my birthday with the guys, and I'd come home and celebrate it with the fam. Doesn't get any better than that. I'll tell you, there was some good times, though. And there was a couple times where as a matter of fact, there might have been only one time I missed March Madness, and I think I know when that was. In fact, I definitely know when that was. That was whenever I turned 50. I turned 50 years old, and the lovely Kim says, Mark, I got a conference in New Orleans. What do you think about that? I'm like, I'm weighing it out. Left hand, right hand. Let's see. New Orleans, March Madness with the same guys that I've seen for the past 30 years. I think I'll take New Orleans. Oh, yeah, of course. And I could remember being down in New Orleans and the guys are texting me and they're calling me and they're sending me pictures. In fact, Rocky sent me a picture of an empty chair and he went, Dr. Mark, you're missed. Nobody's sitting in your chair. And I thought that was kind of fun and that was a blast. And I'd have the lovely Kim take my picture and send it down to the boys. And they'd get a big crack out of it because we had a blast there. We had a blast at New Orleans. We rung in 50 pretty good. Probably a little too good. I think I paid for it for about a week after that. A lot of drinking, a lot of eating. Oh, my. It was just too much of both, let me tell you. But it was a good time. I mean, look, you're only going to turn 50 once, right? So, hey, I might as well ring it in the right way. There was a lot of other birthdays in between that I can remember. Even on my 40th, I think that I might have had a surprise birthday on my 40th. I was probably down at Fisher's, and I remember coming home and meeting the same crew here at home. So basically, I always had two birthdays, and somebody's always wanting to buy you something. So I can remember the guys would try to buy me drinks or buy me food at the bar whenever we went out for March Madness, or if we went out. But usually Fish cooked for us. But when we did go out, the guys would always try to buy me a drink or something like that, and I'd definitely take it. But, I'd come home to another party, which was always good, And as years gone by, I definitely celebrated, my birthday kind of like before I went down to March Madness. So I could probably remember, let me see, I'm thinking of maybe the last, let's say, 15 years or so, I'll say that, we visit Doc and Jackie's quite often. So we'll go down there, we'll see them usually once a week. But around our birthdays, we go down there and we celebrate. Doc has a birthday, and it's, in fact, right before the lovely Kim's birthday. So his is the 25th, Kim's is the 26th, and we ring those birthdays in together. So that's kind of fun. And it seems like 2 weeks later, we're doing the same thing for mine. So we're always celebrating birthdays, and it's still fun because I tell you what, Doc and Jackie know how to throw a party. They definitely know how to throw you a party. They make you feel welcome. You get presents, you get cake, and you get usually a fifth of alcohol. You can't beat that. Those guys are great. But yeah, so I just celebrated another birthday down there, and it was another good time, another good year. You know, you always turn to the next chapter, and you look forward to the next year. And as a matter of fact, my brother came up this year. You know, my brother Mike A came up this year, and we went out and celebrated last night, as a matter of fact. And we had some good eats and some good drinks and some good conversation. And we watched a little TV, and we had a good time. I mean, you can't beat that with all the birthday fun you have. You know, I'm definitely looking forward to another birthday next year. I'll start planning for it and start thinking what I want for it already. You know how that goes. And as my Uncle Frank would always say, as you get older, the years fly by. To him, every day's Christmas, or every day's your birthday. Which is kind of cool. But like I said before, I'd like to hear what you do on your birthday. So feel free to leave your comments below. You know, always like, subscribe, and tap the bell. You know, there's a lot of birthdays out there, and I'd like to hear how people like to celebrate it. So until next time, folks, this is Mark for Right on the Mark with your host, Mark Young. See you next time, folks.